All right, Whalen, which center's going to hold up your lineup tonight? We got two dudes here who absolutely went off a couple nights ago. There was Jokic, who had 93 DK fantasy points, and then Joel Embiid was nearly just as impressive with 77 against Orlando.
Yeah, and Embiid did it in fewer than 30 minutes, which was insane, outdueling Mo Bamba. But, I mean, Jokic is at 12,600, which is insane when you consider that's almost $1,000 more than Giannis, who's been like as consistent as could possibly be. So I don't know if I'm paying that price tonight. I mean, chances are he's probably not going back-to-back 90-plus DraftKings point games. I'm looking to ex-Wisconsin Herd standout Christian Wood, who is at 8,100 against the Warriors. You know, normally this is not a matchup that you'd be targeting. And even without Draymond, the Warriors have still been a good defense. They're top 3 in the league in defensive rating over the last 10. But for the time being, I think we need to stop talking about the Warriors as a ultra elite team. I mean, they're 4-6 over their last 10 games straight up. They lost to the Pacers last night. In their last 10 games, they are 29th in offensive rating, ahead of only Mo Bamba's Orlando Magic. Steph has not been great for 2 months now. Clay again is out tonight for rest. This is a game where I think the Rockets could potentially stick around, and with no Draymond, I think it's a pretty good spot for Christian Wood.
All right, who's in a good spot tonight, Garion? You going to pay up for any of those dudes north of 11 grand?
I mean, you can, obviously. I mean, we talked about Giannis is viable every slate. Jokic is viable every single slate. I do think Jaren Jackson, again, who has center eligibility, coming off like a 35% usage rate. He's someone you always have to consider. But I think, Nick's been talking about it throughout this segment, but I think the Raptors really provide something very interesting at particularly the center position tonight. This is basically like Tecmo Super Bowl, where it wasn't Jim Kelly, it was QB Bills. Just plug in center Raptors, depending on how much money you have left to use a center. Because Pascal Siakam, perfectly viable. He's been, almost averaging a triple-double across his last 5 games. Pseudo point forward kind of stuff for the Raptors, playing, I think he played 44 minutes their last game. And then you've got Chris Boucher, who's also playing like 35 to 38 minutes a night. And we always talk about Boucher as just being one of those guys. If he can get a consistent role, he puts up DraftKings points in bunches. And then below 5K, I think at 4.6, you've got Precious Achiuwa, who's also playing like 35 to 37 minutes per game. Some of that has been to do with Scotty Barnes getting into a little bit of foul trouble in some of these games. And we always have to watch the health of Gary Trent. I mean, if he comes back, the Raptors suddenly go to an 8-man rotation. Oh my God. But I think either one of those 3 guys is viable depending on how much salary you have left for the center position.
All right, Friar, hook us up with the guy at the 5.
So if you're going to go with one of those guys who are 11K plus, I would say Joel Embiid is actually the guy I'm going to go with tonight. I think there's a lot of savings offered there. And the Clippers are 21st in terms of DK fantasy points allowed to opposing centers, or 9th, depending on how you look at it. But my favorite play tonight is actually going to be Bam Adebayo going up against the Hawks at 7.5K. I know he was a big beneficiary of Jimmy Butler exiting early last game, but now that he's back into the mix, getting a little bit more work, he's going up against a Hawks team that is not good against opposing centers. And I don't care if Clint Capella is back tonight or not. Still, they've given up the 7th most DK fantasy points to opposing centers this season, and the Hawks are just outside the top 10 in points in the paint allowed per game this season.